Shalom Aleichem. We continue in Sefer Mishneh Torah, the Rabbeinu Agadol, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimun, Zichron Livracha. I will now share the screen with you. Perek Shlishi, the third chapter, Halacha Aleph. B'shelosha chetharim nichtaru Yisrael. Am Yisrael was crowned by Hashem with 3 crowns. In other words, 3 institutions, 3 areas of endeavor, all of which are essential and fundamental to the proper functioning and existence of the Jewish people. What are these 3 things? Keter Torah, v'cheter Kehuna, v'cheter Malchut. The crown of Torah, the crown of Kehuna, of the priesthood, v'cheter Malchut, and the crown of kingship or political leadership. Keter Kehuna, excuse me. Keter Kehuna, Zacha bo Aharon. Keter Kehuna is not available and not up for grabs for everybody. It was allotted to Aharon and his descendants. Shene'emar v'hayatha lo ulzar'o Aharon berit Kehunat olam. So the pasuk in Bamidbar states explicitly that the Kehuna is in the hands of Aharon and his descendants for all time. Keter Malchut Zocha bo David. David HaMelech, because of his allegiance and loyalty to Hashem, despite his faults, despite sinning on various occasions, because he was also willing to admit his mistakes, and he was willing and able to do teshuvah. And as a rule, did the will of Hashem when leading the Jewish people, when taking care of their affairs. David HaMelech and his descendants were promised the Malchut. Shene'emar, as it states in Tehillim, Zar'o le'olam yihiyeh, v'chis'o chashemesh nerdi. Just as the sun is a permanent fixture of creation, of reality, thus David HaMelech and his descendants are fixed and permanent before me, says Hashem. So what Rambam is getting at here is simply that Kehuna and Malchut, no matter how much a person may want to be a Kohen or be a king, a person cannot, by effort, even with great effort and great dedication, a person cannot achieve this. Keter Torah, on the other hand, says Rambam, Harehu munah u'omed u'muchan lakol. The Keter of Torah, in other words, achieving greatness in Torah is possible. It is not something which devolves by way of Yerusha, of inheritance. It is open to all. Shene'emar morasha keilat Yaakov. It is the inheritance of all of the Jewish people. Keilat Yaakov. Kol mi sheyirza yovo v'yitol. Whoever wishes to study Torah may come and do so. and is able to achieve, according to each person's abilities and dedication and diligence, each person who applies himself to the Torah will succeed, each in his own way, each according to his own level and capabilities. So this statement is, first of all, a statement of fact and a statement of musar, to encourage all people to know that the Torah is the property, so to speak, of all the Jewish people equally. A Kohen has no greater chelik in the Torah than another Jew, than a non-Kohen. And the king also has no greater stature in terms of Torah, as opposed to someone else. It's possible that a king will be a great Chacham, but it's not necessarily so. And in fact, it's usually not the case, because the character traits, the psychological, intellectual, emotional makeup that is required to be a successful king are different, by and large, from those that are required to be a great Chacham in Torah. And therefore they complement each other. And this is the ideal Jewish state and regime, where you have certain people whose abilities lie in the area of governance and leadership, etc. And they are to busy themselves with such concerns. And you have Chachamim, who busy themselves with the study of Torah and becoming ever closer to Hashem. And each side knows that they require the other. The king knows that he must listen to the advice, at least consult Chachamim and hear what they think, what they have to say. And Chachamim also have to know that sometimes you need a person who will decide certain things and has the fortitude to stand up to all kinds of pressures. So we continue. This was Halacha Aleph. Now we turn to Halacha Beth, as you can see on the screen. Shema Tomar Sheotam HaKethurim Gedolim Mikether Torah. Now a person may say, well, that's all very well, but everybody knows that being a Chacham is not the same as being the king, or being the Kohen Gadol, or something like that, or being a Kohen in general, who has many privileges. Harehu Omer, Rambam says, the Pasuk states, Bi Melachim Yimrochu Murozanim Yehonkeplu Sadak Bi Sarim Yosoru. Pasuk in Mishneh. In other words, and this Pasuk is referring to the fact that the Torah is the basis on which a king rules. In other words, according to the Torah, a person cannot claim Ani Emloch, I will be king, because why? Because I feel like it, or because I was able to raise enough funds from various dubious sources to bamboozle the populace by way of the media to imagine that I'm the right person for the job, and therefore many people voted for me. That is one theory of governance, but it's not the Torah theory of governance. That is not how the Torah thinks that the Jewish state should be run. the legitimacy of the king stems from the Torah. And if the king is wise, his decision-making will also be based on the Torah. His policies will be rooted in the Torah. So the Torah is really the foundation of all of the above. Ha lamavta, says Rambam. Therefore you see, shekefer Torah gadol v'kefer kahuna v'kefer malchut. Because it is the Torah that decides that lays down that there must be a kohanim and there must be a kohen gadol and there is a mikdash that functions in a certain way, and that certain individuals called kohanim and the leviim are to serve there and have certain privileges and obligations. This all stems from the Torah. And the same is true for the king, for the political leadership. As we said, if the Jewish state in question is being run according to the Torah, based on the blueprint of the Torah, then the Torah underpins all these things, including the legitimacy of the regime. Amaru Chachamim, the Chachamim stated, Mamzer, Talmid Chachamim, Kodem lekohen gadol am haaretz. If a person is a Mamzer, for example, a Mamzer is a person born of an illicit relationship, which is asur according to the Torah, between a man and a woman. So, for example, a married woman has relations with someone other than her husband, and a child is born as a result of that relationship. That child is referred to as a mamzer. And this has many halachic ramifications, very, very serious ramifications. And yet, this mamzer can be possibly the greatest chacham in the generation. It's not impossible. And it states in the Mishneh, Mamzer Tamid Chachamim, Chodem Kohen Gadol Am Haaretz. If the Kohen Gadol happens to be an Am Haaretz, happens to be an ignoramus, but he is the Kohen Gadol for various reasons, and it might be for the wrong reasons. It might be that he bribed his way to this position, which was something that occurred particularly in the latter half of Beit Sheni. Then, in terms of respect and honor, the Mamzer Tamid Chachamim is to be shown more respect and more honor. Shneimar, Yakarahi mipeninim. Yakarahi kohen gadol shenichnas lifnai lifnim. In other words, the Chachamim being Doresh, the Pasuk in Tehillim, Yakarahi mipeninim. The Torah is more precious. Excuse me, the Torah is more precious than pearls. The word penina is a pearl, and it is similar to the word penimi, or like the word and lifnai word lifnim, which is the expression used to refer to the Kohen Gadol entering the Kodesh HaKodashim once a year on Yom Kippurim. So the Torah is the true yardstick, the ultimate measure of greatness of kavod. In what terms is a Kohen Gadol, a Mamzer Tamid Chachamim, to be given more consideration than even a Kohen Gadol who is an Am Haaretz? For example, if we, for a moment, turn to Hilchot Matnot Anim, So if we look in Hilchot Matnot Aniyim, which has to do with the disbursement of tzedakah, of charity, to the needy, Perek Hilchot Matnot Aniyim Perek Heth at the end, Halacha Yud Zayin, Rambam says, Hayu lefanenu aniyim harbe. If we are in a situation where there are before us many aniyim, poor people who are in need, or shivuyim harbe, or there are many Jews of whom we are aware that need to be redeemed from evil goyim, pirates, kidnappers who are demanding ransom for these people. This was such things go on to occur today as well, but in the ancient world, this was a booming business, and it was unfortunately not uncommon. So if we find ourselves in a situation, we being a certain community of Jews in a certain place, we find that we need to redeem a number of Jews from captivity. Wa'en bakis kedeh lefarnes or kedeh lechasot or kedeh liftot et kulam, but there is not enough resources. The funds available, the community has a fund for such things, but it is not sufficient to supply the needs of all these aniyim or to redeem all these shavuyim. Makdimim et hakohen lalewi. So if we have to choose, a kohen is to be redeemed first or given tzedakah first before a lewi. Lewi kodem li Israel, and a lewi before Israel, a regular Jew. Israel lehalal, وحلال لشتوكي وشتوكي لأسوفي وأسوفي لممزر وممزر لنثين. These are various types of classification which appear in Masechet Kiddushin. We won't go into the details of all of these things, but these refer to people who were not considered Israel Kesherim, as a regular Israel. There is a certain issue with regards to their lineage. A classic example is a mamzer, as we explained before. So a mamzer, as we said before, is a result of an illicit relationship, such as an adulterous woman, or it could be incest or something of this sort. And there is a certain hierarchy. So we have Kohen, Levi, Israel, etc. Halal, Shethuki, Mamzer, Wanathin. Wanathin Kodem Legher, and a Nathin, who was conceived Mikdusha, who was conceived within the Jewish people, comes before Ger Sedek. Shanathin Gadar Imanu Bikdusha, because the Nathin, even though there was a problem with his lineage, with his ancestry, nevertheless, he was born into the Jewish people, and he has grown up literally with us, Bikdusha, in other words, as being part of those people of that nation who receive the Torah and who live according to the Torah. And a ger comes before an Eved Meshuchrar, an Eved Kena'ani, who also undergoes Giur, but is Hayav b'mitzvot ki isha, and not like a regular Jew. Even if he is an Eved Meshuchrar, he is considered less than a ger tzedek who was not an Eved. Lefi shaya bichlal arur, because avadim are referred to as arurim, as cursed, and a ger is not referred to as such at all, quite the opposite. In fact, we say ala tzadikim, etc. Al gerel tzedek in the tefillah. So they are, in fact, models to be emulated. Rambam continues, Halacha Yud Het, Bamed Devarim Amurim. When is this the case? B'shayu Shawim B'Chochma. When all these various types of Jews with various pedigrees are all equal in terms of their knowledge and understanding of Torah. However, if we had before us two Jews that require tzedakah urgently, or that have been captured by these pirates, by these slave traders, and they're demanding that they be redeemed at a very high cost. One of them is a Kohen Gadol of Am Yisrael, but he's an Am Haaretz. Mamzer Talmid Chachamim, and there is a Talmid Chachamim who is unfortunately a Mamzer, but he is a Talmid Chachamim. He's a serious person in terms of Torah. By the way, Talmid Chachamim does not mean a great Torah scholar necessarily. It means someone who devotes much time to the study of Torah and is on this track, on this path of studying Torah and living Torah and being is in connection with Chachamim. That's why he's called a Talmid Chachamim, a student of a follower of the Chachamim. So if we have to make such a choice, Talmid Chachamim Kodem. Today, the term a ben Torah or a Bahur Yeshiva, a serious Bahur Yeshiva, is a Talmid Chachamim. That's the idea, that's the concept. So we see that knowledge of Torah, understanding of Torah, which all things being equal as they should be, means that this is a different kind of person altogether from the Am Haaretz, because it can never be the case that an Am Haaretz and a Talmid Chachamim are the same kind of person in spiritual and in ethical, in terms of ethical measure or comparison, or in terms of a spiritual connection to Hashem and knowledge and understanding of the Torah. There is, we assume there is a very serious and obvious difference. And this is the deciding factor. And the greater a person is in Chokhmah, in knowledge of Torah, understanding of Torah, thus he is placed ahead of others in such a situation. And if one of these people in question that need our assistance is either his Rav, the person who taught him most of the Torah that he knows, or placed him on this track, on this path of Torah study and understanding, or this one of these people is his father, and there is a Hovav Kibud Av, even if there is someone else amongst these captives, shall we say, who needs to be redeemed, who is greater in Chokhmah, Rabbo or Aviu Shehu Talmid Chachamim, if his Rav, obviously his Rav is a Talmid Chachamim, otherwise he couldn't have taught him Torah. So if his Rav is a Chacham, so here we see really the word Talmid Chachamim and Chacham are interchangeable in this particular sentence at least. Rabbo or Aviu or his father, if they are Talmidei Chachamim, Chodem lezeh shehu gadol mehem b'chokhmah, because here we have two things to take into consideration. A, the fact that this Rav over here is a great Rav, that's true, and he should therefore be redeemed first, or given tzedakah first. But we also have the other consideration, which is kibud Rabbo, or kibud Aviv, which is a very serious and fundamental mitzvah. So if his Rav or his father is a Talmid Chachamim, even though less so than another person who requires our assistance, then the Rav or the father comes first. So this is an example of where a Talmid Chachamim, even though he might be a Mamzer, and therefore cannot marry a regular Jewish woman, for example, has a higher status according to the Torah, and in terms of how we are to behave and act, as compared to other people. Another place where we can see the ramification of this halacha is in Hilchot Sanhedrin, Perek Kaf Aleph, Halacha Hey. I'll share the screen with you. Here we are discussing how Beit Din behaves and how it sets its agenda and its timetable when dealing with plaintiffs, people who come before the Beit Din. So in Halacha Hey Daled, Rambam says, Talmid Chachamim wa'am ha'aretz shabau ladin. Two Jews come before a Beit Din. They have some financial dispute. Let's say the Am Haaretz is some kind of workman, artisan, what have you. He performed some work for the Talmid Chachamim in his home. He built him something, he fixed something. The Talmid Chachamim says he didn't do the job correctly. It caused him damage, etc., etc. So they come before a Beit Din. Moshivim et hacham. מושיבים את החכם, אומרים לעם הארץ שב. אם לא ישב, אין מקפידים על כך. First of all, the Chacham is told that he may sit. And the Am Haaretz is also told that he may sit. And if he doesn't sit, we do not make a point of it. ולא יקדים התמיד כשיבוא לדין, וישב לפני רבו שרוצה לדון לפניו. ואם היה קבוע לו זמן לקרות, ובא בזמנו, מותר. So we see again that certain deference is afforded at Talmid Chachamim in a Beit Din situation, not in terms of Hasu Shalom being Maltei Mishpat, not in terms of preferring one over the other, in terms of the decision, the Halachic decision. If the Talmid Chachamim's claim is incorrect, according to the Torah, it's incorrect. And his claim will not be recognized. The fact that he's a Chacham does not change the Halacha at all. He has shown some respect, but not more than that. So we return to Hilchot Talmud Torah Perek Shlishi.
Rabbi, one question.
Yes.
In the previous Makor in the Rambam, it seems to be giving a certain preference to a Kohen in a certain matter that does not relate to Kedusha. The question of if we were dealing with a Kohen who is poor or a prisoner.
Yes.
Am I to understand that, generally speaking, the preference given to a Kohen in matters of Kedusha, that's what I thought, except in such extreme situations of his being poor or in prison, but on day-to-day matters, if it's not an inyan de Kedusha, then a Kohen is not given preference, correct? For example, it wouldn't, if there were a supermarket and the people were waiting online at a supermarket, it wouldn't be necessary or considered appropriate to let a Kohen go in front of you on the line. That's my understanding, because that's not a matter of Kedusha. So what we see in the Rambam there is only giving preference to the Rambam in a matter that's not of Kedusha because it's an extreme type of situation. Is my understanding correct?
I don't think allowing, shall we say, a Kohen to jump the queue in the supermarket is a real, a true example of kavod. It's convenient, it's more convenient to wait less in line at the supermarket, but it's not considered kavod shemamash. It's not a serious type of respect or honor that is being bestowed upon this person. On the other hand, taking into account the knowledge of Torah of a person, of when dealing with two captives who have to be redeemed, and we can only redeem one of them at this moment. That is something very serious, because the bizayon, the thinking of searching for the right words in English. The bizayon, the hashpala, the tremendous disrespect and
demeaning.
Yes, thank you. It's more than demeaning. It's also often involves threat to life in these situations. In other words, if two people are very hungry, they have nothing to eat, and you only give the cup to the one, the other might die from starvation. That's also possible, for example, or in the case of pirates who have captured Jews and now wish to receive ransom. You don't know what will happen from one moment to the next. So when it comes to saving their lives or saving their honor, and the honor of each Jew is also indirectly the honor, the kavod of the Jewish people. And the greater the Jew this person is, the more disrespect and the greater the shame of the Jewish people. Let's say that such a great Torah scholar is held captive by scum of the earth pirates or slave traders. So that is a question of kavod, both for the individual and for Klal Yisrael in general. There's no kavod for Am Yisrael, or not really for the individual either, jumping the queue in the supermarket. It just makes life easier, perhaps.
But for example, let's say on a plane, if we had a halachic state, and the national airline El Al is distributing seats, and it's more comfortable to sit in certain seats up front or in business class, would you say that there isn't a kashavana because it's it's not a question.
I don't think that these are good examples, because here we're discussing things that are a function of payment of money. The difference between the economy class seat and the business class seat, shall we say, is a question of money. How much money you have and how much you're willing to pay for this particular this convenience, for this additional comfort. You may have a Talmid Chachamim, you may even be very wealthy, but he does not think that it's necessary to pay double the price of the ticket in order to fly first class, which is a perfectly reasonable decision. And on the other hand, for another person who is willing to pay and has paid this money, you can't tell him, well, so-and-so will take your place instead because he's a Talmid Chachamim. That is unjust. And so these are not good examples. An example that that Rambam mentions elsewhere has to do with calling up a Kohen first to the Torah. Rambam says that Mishnah, which speaks about, as we just said before, that Mamzer Tamid Chachamim is shown more respect than a Kohen Am Ha'aretz. This applies also to the reading of the Torah. In other words, according to the bottom line of the halakha, according to Rambam at least, this is not perhaps agreed to by all, but Rambam's view certainly is that you call up first to the Torah the greatest Chacham in the Beth Knesset at that moment, and the next is the number two, and so on. And only when you have a situation where, let's say, you have various Chachamim in the Beth Knesset, and you cannot decide, or you do not know how to estimate the relative Chokhmah of Torah, then you revert to the system of turning to the Kohen first, and then to the Levi, and then to the Israel. So only when they're equal, when they're Shuim b'Chokhmah, as we said before. But if it's clear this is not the case, then the Torah is the yardstick, and not the Yechus, not the genealogy.
Are there shuls that you know of historically that follow the Rambam and follow that hierarchy regarding giving out aliyot?
I'm not familiar with such a Beth Knesset or such a community, because it's clear from the Sugyot and the Teshuvot of the Geonim on the subject that the real hashash was, and this is what Rambam writes, was because of mahloket. In other words, if you call up Chacham Aleph as opposed to Chacham Bet to the Torah first, this may result in mahloket, that the second will feel slighted, and this will lead to very possibly to negative outcomes. And to avoid such things, which are a function of human weakness, perhaps, but they're nevertheless real. We prefer to do things in such a way where no mahloket can possibly result. Apparently, this was based on the fact that it happened not only on rare occasions, that such things did lead to mahloket. So, in the Talmud it says that Rav was called up first to the Torah before Rabbi Ameh and Rabbi Aseh, even though they were Kohanim, because no one argued about who was the Gadol B'Torah. And that's the ideal situation where no one argues and everyone knows the truth and everyone accepts the truth as it is. I mean, can you imagine a situation if you're in a Beth Knesset and there's the Rav of the community who's a Talmid Chachamim, but the Rosh happens to be in the Beth Knesset today as well. Which Rav is going to say that the Rosh shouldn't get an aliyah before me? No reasonable person would say such a thing. You would have to be a true scoundrel to say such a thing. But when it's less clear, less obvious, and you're talking about people of lesser stature who are more concerned with their kavod, then who knows what will result. And therefore, the general practice became, as Rambam also writes, I mean, Hagvat Pashut is to go according to the hierarchy of Kohen Levi Israel, and not according to Chokhmah. But this is B'di Avad, according to the Rambam. This is not L'chatchila. This is because of the likelihood of causing mahloket, which is destructive. So it's even more important that to avoid mahloket than to lay down the law that we respect Chokhmah above all, which is true. It should be so, but not everything that should be is. And we all know this is how sometimes how things work. So according to Rambam, that is b'di'avad.
Binyamin, in your question, I think you were also referencing the fact that there are some authorities who disagree whether it's a mitzvah lahaktim kohanim called Bar Shebik Tusha, or just in general lahaktim kohanim, whether or not the thing itself is holy. Going up to read the Torah is obviously a Davar Shebik Tusha, but something else may or may not be. So there's a question of whether kohanim should be given priority for that too.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that was definitely at the heart of my question. In other words, is it are Kohanim to be given preference just in matters of kedusha, or also in other matters? And my question was rooted in that source that indicates that in that would show, as the rabbi said, in the case that the Kohen is going to be demeaned because he's a prisoner or because he's poor, then we give him preference. But in day-to-day matters of standing online at a makolet, at a grocery store, so the rabbi made clear that's not going to cause him to be demeaned. That's just a question of convenience. But maybe Leon is bringing up the question: okay, so are there other types of areas that are not b'kedusha where there might be an inyan to give preference to the Kohen, that are not necessarily connected to the fact that he's impoverished or in prison, but some other area that's not b'kedusha, that it might be appropriate to give preference to Kohen? That is a question that remains in my mind.
We shall see later that the Talmid Chachamim is to be given preferential treatment also in the marketplace, in terms of being able to sell his sahara, his merchandise, and before others who are also selling similar merchandise. The idea there has a lot to do with not so much with kavod perhaps, but with making it possible for this person to make a livelihood in a manner which will take less time, or will demand less of his time and his efforts, so that he will be able to return to his study of Torah. In other words, Jewish society sees a value in promoting Talmidei Chachamim, not necessarily in handing them money, but certainly in giving them some head start in certain areas. As was mentioned in the comment now by Theon also, there are other examples, the Talmud Rishona, which we shall see in other contexts with regards to a Kohen and to a Chacham. So there are other concepts. We'll see them as we proceed. So let us now let us continue. So Halacha Gimel, should be able to see the screen. Excuse me. En lecha miswa b'chol miswaf kulan shehi shekula keneged Talmud Torah. There is no miswa in the entire Torah which carries the same weight and gravitas as Talmud Torah, the study of Torah. Ela Talmud Torah keneged kol miswaf kulan. Talmud Torah is at the head of the list. It comes before all other things. If you will recall, perhaps in the previous parak, we saw that Tinokos and Beth Rabban, children studying Torah in school, are not, their studies are not to be interrupted, even in order to assist in building the Beit Mikdash, for example. And why is this, says Rambam? Talmud mevili le ma'aseh, because study of the Torah brings about performance and observance of the Torah. Therefore, Rambam says, "Lefichach haTalmud kodem leMaaseh b'chol makom." And therefore, the Talmud, the word kodem does not mean necessarily comes first, that is also included in those words, but it also refers to the importance, relative importance, and weight to be granted various things, various activities within the world of Torah. So Talmud comes before the Ma'aseh, before the observance of Torah. This statement can be understood in two ways. Rambam explains in his Perush on the Mishnah that Talmud comes before the Ma'aseh in the technical and obvious sense that a person will not know what to do if he has not studied. If he does not know what he is to do, he cannot do it. So Talmud kodem leMa'aseh in that sense, clearly. A person has to know what the Torah states in order for him to be able to live up to that demand or that standard. But the words of the Chachamim were actually Gadol Talmud shemiviri de ma'aseh, as Rambam quotes here. This is the lashon of the Chachamim. Talmud miviri de ma'aseh. The Maharal points out that miviri de ma'aseh is not just kodem le ma'aseh, as Rambam writes here. So Rambam essentially is equating these two things. The Maharal in Prague states that it is not so. It is clearly kodem le ma'aseh, but it's also mevili de ma'aseh. Study of Torah instills within a person, creates within a person the desire to observe and to do these things. So the Talmud is also kodem is given a special status, has a special status, because it results in the Jew, the person who studies the Torah, or the person who then is taught Torah by the person who studied Torah. The study of Torah creates the desire, the motivation to live according to the Torah. Rambam continues. He says, "Haya lefano asiyat miswa," with Talmud Torah. If a person is in a situation where he has to, a certain mitzvah is incumbent upon him right now, and he also wants to study Torah. He's the kind of person who does study Torah, and he would like to study Torah. But there's also this other mitzvah which he can perform, which he is aware of. So what should he do? How should he spend his time and his efforts? Im efshar lamiswa lehe'asor ha'yedei acherim. So the rule, the klal that Chazal laid down was, if it is possible for this mitzvah, shall we say, the mitzvah of hachnasat kala, to raise tzedakah for a needy young woman who is about to be married, a poor family, or she has no parents, and she needs a basic dowry. She needs some basic. She may not have the money to buy a wedding dress. She may not have. She may need to purchase other items before the wedding. So this is a very important mitzvah, achnasat kala. The question is this Talmid Chachamim the only person who can do it, or perhaps there are other people who can ensure that this important cause is dealt with, and he will be free to study Torah. If there are others who can do this mitzvah, who will do it, he should not cease his learning for this purpose. But if this is not so, for whatever reason, there are no other people who will take care of this very pressing, urgent matter. He should stop his study of Torah, take care of what has to be done, and then return to his study of Torah.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Can't these principles be used to justify the Haredim in large number not going to the army, in the sense that perhaps there are enough Jews that are serving in the army, not to mention the fact that there's so many women doing all sorts of jobs, even though they really shouldn't be there. And given the spiritually problematic aspects of being in the army at times, one can perhaps come up with a rational basis in halacha based on these principles to say, well, the Jewish people are also in a poor. On top of what I just said, the Jewish people are also in a poor spiritual status where many Jews are not Shomer Shabbat. There's a need to strengthen the spiritual level of the Jewish people, and therefore the army is doing just fine. People are fighting, and not that they're being led, not that the army is being led just fine, but the army has sufficient numbers of people. I mean, and therefore I will learn Torah, and there's other people to perform that mitzvah.
This is a very serious discussion, which we really cannot do justice to in a few moments. I will state that the reason that in the Haredi world they do not want the young men to go to the army is not because of this halakha here that we just read. It's not because of it's a mitzvah that can be done by others. That's not the case. It's entirely based on the fear and the concern that entering such an organization run in a certain way by certain kinds of people will result in a certain percentage, at least, of those young men being negatively influenced in Jewish terms. And this is not an empty or baseless concern. It's very real. I once saw, many years ago, a sociological study that was undertaken by certain academics with regards to the first 2 or 3 decades of the state of Israel, which demonstrated that approximately 25% of religious soldiers who entered the army with a kippah left the army without a kippah. This is not referring to the present time. I'm not saying it's different today, better or worse. I do not have the exact figures, although I could perhaps hazard an educated guess. But at that time, talking about the 50s, the 60s, 70s, the minyonam, that was the case, and I think that is correct. I believe that to be true, and that is essentially the Haredi rationale. That's number one. Another thing that should be pointed out is, if we're talking about this halakha here about im efshar la mitzvah le'asot al yedei acherim, it is a fact that the army does not have enough manpower for a number of reasons. One of them being the foolhardy statement by someone who should have known much better, the person who was chief of staff of the army at that time, Ehud Barak, Shemer Sha'im Yerkov, if not for what he did in the past, because of what he is doing at the present, which is causing tremendous division of the country and supporting every cause as long as it is opposed to the Torah in every way. He's actually functions today as an agent of foreign powers and entities to dismantle the Jewish state from within. That's who Ehud Barak is today. But when he was chief of staff, which goes back, I don't remember exactly, 30 plus years, shall we say, he came up with the inane concept that what we need is a tzava chacham v'katan, a smart and small army. And we don't have to be concerned about so much about manpower. This is 100% pure nonsense. It should not surprise you. This is the same person who decided it was a wonderful idea to flee from Lebanon way back then. It was his idea that we have to, when he was prime minister, briefly, but again, these people managed to do in a brief time more damage than 100 wise men can do over many years. He caused Israel to withdraw from southern Lebanon, and so today we have a true existential threat in the form of Hezbollah. So we're not talking about a man who understands strategic military affairs in actual fact, despite claims to the opposite. The fact that he served in a certain unit, in a certain elite unit, and the fact that he was involved in certain successful military operations, that is all true. But it's also true that a person can be involved in such exploits and succeed and still be a fool in greater overall terms, and not understand basic things. I heard an ex-general of the army not long ago interviewed in which he said that this was a tremendous foolhardy statement and policy of Ehud Barak, which basically made it very easy for many people to avoid army service. And he said, we don't really need these people, but that's not true. You need, for example, to have more elite, higher, better trained forces to undertake certain military operations, but you need to have many other soldiers who are perhaps of a lower standard in terms of their military prowess and their training and their abilities, but nevertheless they're quite capable of being a soldier standing there and holding a gun and providing an outer ring of security and dealing with other kinds of issues that need to be dealt with. That is absolutely essential, and if this is not clear, it will unfortunately become clear in the conflagration that is no doubt not far off. So the stupidity, the lack of wisdom and understanding of such people, such as Ehud Barak, will become apparent in the fullness of time if they have not already become apparent. So that argument, the army has more than enough people, etc., that's not true. We suffer from a very serious manpower problem, and I know this. We all know this. We should know this, and our enemies know this as well. And we can only hope that we shall not pay the full price for our folly. But the issue that you raised about the Haredim and army service in general is not based on that. We shall end here for today.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.